So my guests from right to left, Ashley Meyers, who has a company called sellyourscreenplay.com.
Selling your screenplay.
Sellingyourscreenplay.com. I'm doing this pure by memory. David Zuckerman. Thank God I did that right. Virtual Pitch Fest, besides being a producer. Jerrol, LeBaron, Inktip, and Franklin Leonard, The Blacklist, which I have whatever. Anyway. So I sat next. I wanted to be near first today. So, okay. So instead of me explaining what your companies do, let's just kind of walk through what they do. And then my question out there will be, have any of you used these services before? So let's start with Ashley. Give them a Cliff Notes version of what you do.
The service, we have a variety of services. We do have some classes, some education and stuff, but the main thing is the email and fax blast to producers, and we also have an agents and managers list. And that's been primarily what we've been selling.
And how long have you been doing this for?
We started in 2009. I started the site.
And you're happy with your progress?
Yeah, I mean, it's been growing nicely. I started a podcast in August, and that's been doing well just to market it and get it out there. So yeah, it's growing nicely. There's a limit to how many blasts I really want to do, and we're approaching that limit now.
Okay. And how many people in the audience have used this service before? Okay. So there's a lot of potential people here, as we like to say. David?
Hi, I'm David Zuckerman. It's very nice to be here. I feel thrilled. My grandfather was a member of the WGA, so I'm trying to fill his shoes a little bit here. And I have my Director of Development, Z Chang, over there, if you want to talk to her. And I do see a lot of people here that have used my site. There's Kole Costello, who writes a blog for me, and Jack Sikowski is here. Basically, what Virtual Pitch Fest does, it enables writers to pitch their scripts online. And it's just like sending a regular letter like you would in the mail, but you're doing it online through the site. And the reason that writers use us is because we guarantee a response back to every query letter that you send within 5 days. And right now we let WGA members pitch for free, which is why I see some of my friends here. We give WGA members 5 free pitches every Monday in their accounts, and we've had quite a few success stories, so that's what I've got.
Okay. Jerrol?
Jerrol, LeBaron here with Inktip. It's basically a script listing service where you put your scripts on the site, and then producers are able to then search for it and find out about you. Started in 2000, and since that time, well, last year alone we had 38 movies that were made from writers and scripts found through Inktip. But I'm hoping that we discuss more along the lines of what you all can do to advance your careers. I'm not really looking to, anyone can go to a website and find out about Inktip, so I'm hoping that I can actually get some points across with regards to your making your next step, whether it's getting representation or whatever in your careers.
Absolutely not. We're not going to let them do that. We'll let you do that. How many people use David's service, Virtual Pitch Fest, have used it? I'm sorry, David's virtual. And Inktip, how many people have? Okay, so far you're the leader. Franklin?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming.
So, yeah, I'm here as a representative of the Blacklist, which began literally almost 10 years ago as an annual survey of Hollywood's most liked unproduced screenplays. I was an executive at Leonard DiCaprio's production company, and I surveyed a bunch of my peers and said, send me a list of your 10 favorite scripts from this year that you've read that haven't yet been made, and aggregated the information and sent it back out with a vaguely subversive name, and it became a thing, much to my surprise. And we've done that every year. This December will actually be the 10th year that we've done it. Of the 600 or so scripts on the first 8 years list, 250 of them have been produced, and they've made $20 billion in worldwide box office. 3 of the last 6 Best Pictures were Blacklist scripts, and 7 of the last 14 screenwriting Oscars were Blacklist scripts. But I'm not really interested in claiming credit for those films. I think that the credit goes to the writers and the makers of the films. What I am interested in is the coincidence of sort of crowdsourcing the opinion of a large number of Hollywood gatekeepers, and the likelihood that that crowdsourcing yields results that go on to that kind of success. And to that end, and sort of realizing that with changing technology, with my partner Dina Siamic, who's a computer engineer out of Cambridge, Massachusetts, we built a website that allows anyone on earth to upload their screenplay to our site for a fee, have it evaluated by a team of readers. We have 85 now, all of whom have worked for at least a year at a major reputable Hollywood company, wherein a significant part of their job was reading scripts. And then we sort of act like eHarmony for people who write movies and television and people who make movies and television. And we've been live for about 19 months. We've seen about 20,000 unique downloads of uploaded scripts by industry professionals. We have about 2,300 members, from agency assistants to studio presence and network heads. We're partnered with the WGA West and East and the Writers Guild of Great Britain, Warner Brothers, Disney, TNT, TBS, Fox, Wiggs, Cassian Elwes, the Hasty Pudding Institute of 1770. And we have a very big announcement that I wish I could talk about right now, but stay tuned.
Yeah, well, that's
stay
not
tuned in
gonna
early
fly.
May. If you're a sports fan, you'll be very excited.
Okay, hopefully it's not that you're showing the World Cup.
I wish.
I know you do. So let me ask a question to all of you, kind of across the board. Your sites, what are they best suited for? In other words, what kind of writer and how would someone best use your site? We'll start back with Ashley because it's been a while since we spoke to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it runs the board. I mean, I've had people just starting out. I would definitely say the people that have had the most success with the email and fax blast are writers that have some experience. I'm finding that most of the writers, if they have no experience, they get the blast, and the results, they don't get as many script requests, and then obviously...
What about genre? Any specific genre work
don't
better
see
than
that.
others?
No, I don't see that. I mean, thinking just if you think about what I'm doing, I mean, it's basically cold query letters to producers. So, you know, you do have to be mindful of budget and stuff and think about who are going to be the people that actually respond to these type of cold query letters. And for the most part, those are not, you know, studios that have access to all the top agents. So it is going to be, you know, a lot of the AFM type fare, producers that are looking for, you know, limited location, stuff that's on a budget, that kind of stuff. Genre not so much.
And sending
but
out a blast costs what?
there's a couple of different services. The agent manager is $109. The producer's blast is $159. I don't really recommend, frankly, the agent and manager's blast. It's difficult to get those script requests. My producer's database is much, much bigger, so the response is just much, much bigger, and most of the success has come through that.
Okay. David?
Yeah, we have we have like 73 Writers Guild members now using our site. So basically why it's good to use is because, you know, as things become tougher and tougher, there's a lot of people here that are great writers, but for some reason their idiot agents don't want to represent them. So, you know, and I've also got a producing background, okay? So, you know, and I tried to be a writer a long time ago and found out, well, I'm much better at telling people how to write than I am actually writing. So I have a hell of a lot of respect for you guys. And like I said, it's in my blood. Our site basically lets you pick and choose who you want to pitch to, and you're guaranteed a response back. We have about 375 studios, production companies, really big players, you know. We've got like Paradigm, Sony, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So there's also mid-sized production companies and smaller-sized production companies, and that's where Writers Guild members would really probably get a lot of hits, you know, because you don't always want to, you know, sometimes, you know, you're showing it to an executive at a big studio, and if you haven't had a hit movie in a couple of years, they don't want to read your script. But
Is there an element that gives some information to the writer as far as where they should go with who they should try to pitch to, or is that kind of their research?
No, on the site, you know, it's kind of like Match.com, you know, eHarmony with
eHarmony, we
yeah.
got Match.
So it's like you get to research.
Anybody have FarmersOnly.com?
What?
It's a very good site.
I haven't had luck with either site, so I don't know what's wrong with
Farmers
me.
Only is a great ranchers, farmers. It's fabulous, Yearly. If you're an outdoors
that
person,
site
go
is
there.
real, right? Like
Yes.
it's not a that's
Yes.
We have their credits and what they're currently seeking, you know,
Okay.
on the site. So, and then you can add them to your favorites and all this. So, you know, we urge.
So who reads it? So if I pick out Paradigm, or is that it's not who's the reader? It's not the secretary on lunch break. I'm hoping it's someone else.
Well, it really depends. Sometimes there's head of companies that are
Okay.
that are listed. Sometimes it's the development
Is it the
executive.
person listed on that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is. But you know how it works in this town. If someone
Right.
says, "I'll take a look at it," that doesn't necessarily mean
Right.
they're going to read it.
It's
But
hard to
what-
believe. Yeah, I
yes,
know.
But
People
what
would
we
lie.
do is we're guaranteeing the access.
Right.
So you're pitching your script. You're sending a little query letter saying, "Hey, this is this is a script about David coming to the Writers Guild, meeting a lot of nice people. Would you like to read it?" They get an
Right.
automatic email,
and
they
for
can-
Writers Guild members,
yeah.
it's free. So you're
free.
you're a bargain
For this year, it's
for
free.
this year.
For this year, correct.
2014
Yeah, and they just
Okay.
email me, david@scriptcoach.com, and
sends them
Catch you
some
up.
stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Actually, I did that because I wanted to try it out.
how did it go?
It went very well. I got everything. I got it all.
You go ahead and just ask me the question again.
Which question do you want me to ask you again? Which dating service are you comparing us to?
What was the question?
The question was, tell how your service is best suited for what kind of writers, or you know what? You've got an idea of what you think everyone should be asking you. You told me. I mean, so
Yeah.
ask yourself that question and then answer it.
Okay,
Be
well,
better than mine, probably.
okay. I'm gonna tell you what. Why don't I just take a couple of minutes here, and
Okay.
then I'll just relinquish the floor, and then let the three of you guys.
No, we don't like that. We don't like
All
that.
right.
Give us a brief
Hey,
idea.
here's why I'm here, because like any writer, you ask yourself, you go out and you see a movie and you go, wow, that was a pretty good movie, but I think I can write one just as good as that. I mean, how many here see movies and week after week after week, and you see a TV show week after week after week, and you say to yourself, wow, that is such a brilliant piece of writing. That is just incredible. I could never possibly be that good. I don't even belong in the same room as those people. You guys feel that way generally about the movies you see? Or do you feel like, well, I see these movies here, and I think I'm, I don't have to be better, but I think I'm just as good as them. I mean, let's get a raise of hands. How many feel that way? Right. And so the thing is, the real question is why is it that they're getting all the work? Why is it that they're getting paid the big bucks? Why is it that their movies are actually getting on the silver screen and their shows on TV and not yours? That, to me, is the important question, and the reason I came here to this event, not to...
Okay.
Not to sit my
And
way.
is there a shorter answer to that?
No.
No. Okay, then we'll piecemeal that answer in as we go.
Let's do.
Okay. But for us commoners that use your service, basically discuss your
you
service.
Just post a script. You just post your script on the site, and then producers log in and they search for scripts, and then they can search by any of hundreds of different ways of finding it, and then they read the pitch, they like it, they read the synopsis, they like it, they read the script, and then they contact the writer directly and make the deal. And from that, in the last 3 years, we've had almost 100 movies made, and about 700 writers who have either gained representation or gotten hired or sold their screenplay or optioned it. But it's about 100 movies made in the last 3 years.
Okay. Franklin,
Same question.
let's you have a better one.
Look, I think that we provide a wide variety of services, but I think it really depends on what you're looking for in terms of how you're going to use the site. If you're a novice writer, I don't recommend that you give us your money. That's simple, because our database and sort of our process is designed to identify writers who can work competitively with the best writers in the industry, and we evaluate on that standard. But we have a number of free services. We're the publisher of Scott Meyers' blog, Go Into the Story, excuse me, which if you're not reading, you should be. I think he's probably the best screenwriting blogger online, and certainly I think he's the second most trafficked behind John August. We also host the Blackboard, which is a community forum about screenwriting online, completely free. And then, the service, again, depends on what you're looking for. We provide very high quality, very inexpensive, very fast turnaround feedback on your script. Literally, if it takes longer than 3 weeks, you get a free month of hosting. And a lot of people do use our feedback service as a way to get sort of quick, reliable feedback on how the industry is likely to perceive their script so that they can do a rewrite.
Expand on that
Yeah.
as far as the cost to have a script put
Yeah,
on.
so it's $25 a month per script to host it on our site. And then you can get feedback, which amounts to about a paragraph of the script's greatest strengths, paragraph of on its greatest weaknesses, and a half paragraph on its commercial prospects. And so then some numerical scores on things like plot, character, premise, and setting, and then an overall score from 1 to 10. And that runs you $50. For a TV pilot, 30 minutes or less, it's $30.
And who does that?
Yeah, so we have 85 readers, all of whom have had at least a year of experience as paid employees of major reputable Hollywood companies, primarily agencies and management companies, but also production companies and studios, wherein a significant part of their job was reading the material. And they're also familiar with the marketplace as it exists currently on the ground. Then they submit their resume and 2 examples of coverage to me. I evaluate the coverage based on my decade of experience in development, and we've hired fewer than 15% of those who've applied with that 1 year of minimum experience. So for novice writers, they do people do use it for that sort of feedback. For writers who feel like they're ready to put their best foot forward and actually compete for jobs with working writers in the industry, they're able to upload their scripts, have it evaluated, and if it's evaluated positively, we tell a large number of people in the industry as a trusted source, here's a script that you should pay attention to. And I think that's why we've seen 20,000 unique downloads over the last 19 months. And then for Guild members, we also, as part of our partnership with the WGA West and East and Great Britain, you can list your scripts in our database entirely free of charge. You can tag the script with over 1,000 tags. The number of searches that directors, producers, and financiers can do on our site that yield at least 1 script, that number has 255 digits. So if you're looking for an action movie set in China with a car chase, a love triangle, a female lead between the ages of 19, 20, and 24, and a theme of redemption, you can do that search on our site, and if such a script exists, it'll pop up.
My God. Lady with the long hair.
When you talk about, thank you. So I think you said 85 or so readers, people who are qualified to read. So, but each reading, you'll only be getting feedback from one reader? Or
Yeah, for each $50, you can get 1 reader, and then if you want to get more, you absolutely can.
And it's blind? You don't know who's reading you?
You don't know who's reading you. We assign all of our reads based on genre preference, so we don't have like a horror aficionado reading a romantic comedy or vice versa, because no one wants that.
And TV people reading TV and film.
Exactly. Yeah, and our TV readers have all had experience specifically in television. Our film readers have all had experience specifically in film.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a quick question before we move? Let's go somewhere there. Let's go there and then go left there.
Hi, just real quick. I am primarily focused on new media, and I just wondered if any of you have a special approach available for web series and new media type stuff.
When you say approach, what do you mean?
Is your service
We do.
basically to sell new media properties? I'm
Yeah,
assuming.
could I list my web series? I mean, it would be more equivalent to a TV pilot than it would be to a feature film, but get a reader's feedback and that type of thing. Any aspect of your service that would be applicable for someone whose primary focus is developing and writing web series.
On my site, there are a few companies that are looking for that. There's not many, but there are some.
We definitely do. I mean, when I say TV, what I really mean to say is episodic. So original episodic pilots. And we do evaluate really any form of that. So that can be miniseries, that can be web series, that can be anything. We actually have a partnership with WGAW, which is the YouTube channel started by Rodrigo Garcia, Jake and John Avnet. That's the #1 scripted YouTube channel online, whereby you're able to submit feature TV script or web series, and they're going to be giving a blind deal to develop a pilot at WGAW, and we're going to identify 10 writers to pass along to them, and they're going to hopefully identify 1 to develop a series with.
I have had some people do some television stuff, nothing in like the shorts or the, what you're kind of talking about, the web series. But I mean, my list is massive. It's over 5,000 producers. So I have no doubt that there would be some people interested in that. But I think it would be really for you to take a step back and try and figure out what exactly you're trying to gain from that. Are you trying to sell it? Are you trying to get work as a writer? This is kind of a demo piece. And then it would be a matter of crafting your query letter to that end. I mean, if you're just trying to drive traffic to it, it'd probably be an expensive way to do that. But if you're trying to get work as a writer, you might want to do a query letter and then say, maybe consider me for something else.
Yeah, I have a question with regard to the blacklist. Yeah, let's say if you pay to have coverage done, or what happens, obviously, if there's good coverage, you want it to go out. What if the coverage isn't positive? Is it up to you to say, don't send it out, or does it immediately become public on
That's a
the
great
site?
question. No, we have a blanket do no harm policy. So if you purchase coverage, I mean, we don't even call it coverage because it's not conventional coverage in terms of its length. But if you purchase an evaluation on the site and it comes back and it's not a good score, no one ever has to know that you even purchased an evaluation. You keep it hidden, and the default is that it is hidden, and you make the decision about whether to make it public. Any piece of information about your script on our site, you make the decision about whether it's made public within the context of our site, period, or whether it's made public at all. So no one ever need know that you even purchased an evaluation for it, but it's still, your title and author information and your agent, if you have one, is still listed in our database, but no one knows that it was evaluated positively or negatively.
Yeah, and you say if you're in the Writers Guild, you can sign up and you just put your titles and your log lines on, and
Yeah,
they can
you
either
can-
go out or not go out?
Yeah, well, so you can list your title, author, log line, tag your script as necessary, and if someone's interested in it, they can contact you directly via the site or via your representation.
Okay, thank you.
The young lady over there.
Thank you. I
the
have
mic.
like a follow-up question. I'm just a little confused.
We can do that.
So you said that for the guild members, you can list your log line, things like that. But you also said there's a $25 a month fee to host a script
To
on
host
the
the
site.
script
Is
itself.
that separately? Like, is that a different thing?
No, they're all part of a sort of a wider database. So if you imagine it, there's an entire database, right? And there's a subset of those the scripts that are listed by title and author that also have their script hosted, so it's available. So if I'm a producer and I go online and I say, I want to find a comedy with a budget between $5 and $10 million, that's going to generate a list, and that list, some of which are going to be just the sort of basic information about the script, the listed information, title, author, representation, whatever it is. Some of the scripts are going to have title, author, and then the ability to download the script live on the site. But again, it's sort of a large database. The free service allows you to list the script, period. But you're still going to show up on the same search results. You're just not going to have the script listed, and a person's going to have to take the extra step of reaching out either to you directly to get a copy of it or to your representation.
We're going to do one more question, and then we're going to come back to questions later, but we're going to do one now, and then we're going to go back to my amazing list of questions.
For Franklin, quick question. I know some of the programs have I guess you can say a dollar amount to how much you could have made as a writer.
Yeah.
Given all of us here are guild members, how many of those programs or partnerships have those thresholds versus are open-ended?
The vast majority of them have some sort of threshold. So, for example, the Cassian L. West Fellowship that we did that sent one writer to Sundance as sort of Cassian L. was his mentee, that cap was $5,000. And the guy that ended up going to Sundance worked as a receptionist at the UPS store in Santa Monica. He's now represented by Circle of Confusion, and Cassian is optioned his script. But, and then there have been other partners. There's our Blacklist Labs, the first one of which happened in Las Vegas in October of last year. That was $25,000. The vast majority of our current opportunities, the cap is $500,000 over the last 10 years. So, if you've made more than that over the last decade, congratulations. If you haven't, you're eligible. And I believe all of the caps, even including the ones that are coming, it's $500,000 over the previous 10 years. So
let me ask you all a question, same kind of question. So over here I have this little list of talent, hard work, determination, luck, and then the big question mark, being potentially the 5 keys to success. Any of those jump out as the key? Or from your point of view, is there something else that makes using your site or what you would tell writers to be successful? Jerrol, because you wanted to.
Yeah, I would say that it's the last one is the question mark.
As it always is.
Well, let me give you just like a little bit of analogy. You've all heard of the saying, success is 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration, right? So let me ask you, as a writer, what does that mean to you? 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration.
It means I have to bust my ass. That's what
Okay, good. But in what regard? In the writing or
Oh, I'm sorry. I won't repeat what I said.
sorry, sorry,
You
listeners.
said you have to bust your ass.
Yeah, it means that I have to. For instance, I just finished a pilot, and I woke up at 3:15 in the morning so that I could get into the office and not be bothered, so that I could meet a particular deadline. So that's part of the perspiration and the tears that came with that.
Okay.
So
All
that's
right.
what it means.
And what about you, Colin?
Mark.
Oh, Mark?
Mark Zickery, yeah.
I'm
hi.
sorry, Mark.
That's
What
fine,
about you,
Jerrol.
Mark?
It's good.
Okay.
I think the single most important thing is to build a fan base and to reach out directly to an
Yeah,
audience.
but what part is inspiration and what part is perspiration?
Well, Jesus, depends on the day you're writing.
Okay, I'm gonna
Okay, then I'm
come
going to come
back.
back. Can I just finish the one little spot on
Absolutely.
that? Okay, good. So from my perspective, now it may not be 10% and 90%, but from my perspective, inspiration is you have the idea, you work over that idea, you write the screenplay, you get others to look at it, you rewrite it, you get another person to look at it, you get coverage on it, and you just put all this time and effort into making that script a masterpiece. That is your 10% inspiration. That's doing what you love to do. The other 90%, just for 10 and 90, it could be 30 and 70, but the other 90% is going out there, networking, making yourself known, marketing, whatever word that summarizes that all is the 90% perspiration. And that really is the missing key element, is that. If you're going to spend 100 hours writing a screenplay, then you should be spending 100, 150, 200 hours marketing it. Because like you said, all you're writing is as good as what you see out there, and I believe you.
Okay, let's go.
I'm going to fundamentally disagree.
I figured.
Thank God.
Here's the thing. The reason why the scripts, the movies that you see that you're disappointed with exist is not because there's a conspiracy to keep you out. It's because the industry is calcified in the way that it has always been, and it is not rational for them to take a different approach in seeking out new talent because they have limited amounts of time. They know that they're not going to lose their jobs by making a movie that's good enough. And the fact of the matter is the vast majority of their time, they're trying to make a great movie, and in the process of making a great movie and dealing with economic realities, they make compromises that result in a movie that are not as strong as the ones they want them to be. Very few people in this business set out to make a bad movie. They do the best with what they have. If you want to break into the industry and have a sustained career as a screenwriter, spend 200 of your hours perfecting your craft and 1 hour getting it into the right hands. Because I can promise you that if you have the goods, and when I say the goods, I don't mean good enough. What I mean is if you have a script that is making 75 or 50 to 75% of the people that read it bawl their eyes out with how good it is, and they can't wait to tell everyone they know that they read it and it was amazing, I can assure you the rest will take care of itself. And I think that this notion that you need to be out there networking and spending time shaking hands and getting people to know who you are may have been true 10 years ago, it may have been true 5 years ago, but it's definitely not true now. And there are more than 50 writers that have used our service and other services out there who had the goods, and when the people that needed to read their script in order for them to get signed, they got signed. Like, it really is that simple, and I'm sure you can detect some amount of agita in my voice, but I think that this notion that the only way that one can succeed as a screenwriter is to pick up their life and move to Los Angeles and network their brains out is successful is a scourge on the industry, both in terms of the quality of the movies that we produce and, frankly, the diversity of the industry as a whole. If you are a 40-year-old who has a mortgage and 2 kids, picking up your life and moving to Los Angeles to network is a bad decision. And it has no correlation whatsoever with your ability to write a screenplay. Focus on the writing. Make sure that your writing is the sort of thing that you can walk into anybody's office, slap your script down on the desk, and know that the next morning that even if they don't want to buy it or represent you, they will respect you and want to tell somebody that they should. and you do
I'll go
that,
ahead
the rest
and-
will take care
I'll
of
go ahead and
itself.
fundamentally disagree with that. Just to take a step back,
It's okay.
I'm actually I
Can't
am
do better than that, no matter
I'm,
what I
I'm
do.
a screenwriter, and so I started selling your screenplay as a really I started it because to market my own work. And what Franklin is saying is true. I mean, if you're a brilliant writer, you don't need to spend a lot of time marketing. If you're Shakespeare, you don't need to spend a lot of time marketing. But what about all those other people that are not brilliant writers? I mean, there's a place for us. I'm not a great writer. I'm a good writer, but I've sold a lot of scripts, and I've done it through just sheer brute force on the marketing front. And so, I mean, the more talent you have, the less time you need to spend marketing. And at some point, you need to take a step back and say, well, yes, if there's a handful of people that are super talented and they don't need to spend a lot of time marketing. But the further down you go on that, what about the rest of us? I'm not a super talented writer. Should I just give it up? Should I throw it in? No, I'm going to make it up in the marketing. And listen to what he said just a moment ago. He asked about the 10% and 90% person. Oh, well, it's the writing and the best in your ass writing. Well, that's what the emails I get. I'm always so amazed at how so few writers spend so little time marketing. They put it up on a site like the Blacklist and it doesn't succeed and they give up. And you know what? If you keep persevering and you keep spending that time marketing, there's going to be some talent. I like to look at like George Harrison as kind of the model. It's like if he hadn't been, if he had just gone off on his own, he would have been told you're not talented. It took him 5 years of hanging out with the two greatest songwriters of all time to get to that level. And so I do think that there's a place for people that are not super talented. They can make it up in the hard work. Of course, you got to have a good script. You got to continue to improve your craft. But I mean, they spend $100 million making a movie, and then they spend $100 million marketing that movie. Even good movies need $100 million to market them. Good screenplays need time and energy.
Let me go to David as a comment. You want to respond?
No, I guess the question is, are we
A
really
chance to respond to him.
Are we
Okay,
really?
well,
are we?
David's been sitting there and I just want to buy your vocabulary, by the way.
Are we really recommending that people aspire to being good enough and then make it up in marketing? Look, the reality is
I
to
don't
have
think
a,
he's saying that. I think I
think that is
hear
what-
you.
it is what
No,
you're
but that's
saying.
not what he's saying. What he's saying is that not everybody is equal as a writer. I think I'm probably a good writer. Am I a great writer? Who knows? Did I get a movie made? Yes. Did I get another movie getting ready made? Yes. I did it more through probably networking because and sitting at my desk all day because luckily I can afford the time to write all day. So, and that would be, before we go there, let me ask a quick question to the audience. How many people write full-time and have no other jobs? Okay, so that's a pretty decent number. For whatever reason, doesn't matter why. Okay. And how many people here think they are good at networking? Shrinks down, doesn't it? Interesting. Okay. Jerrol, and then we'll come back to you, Franklin. Jerrol? And David?
Actually, I was just teasing. I didn't have any. I mean,
Oh,
he was
okay.
he was eloquent enough to where he really covered what I
Okay.
wanted to say.
David?
Well,
Thoughts
I mean,
on what you're hearing?
Yeah, I've given it a great deal of thought, and I've casually polled my studio executive friends and a lot of my writer friends, and I think the key ingredient really comes down to alcohol.
Miss. Okay. Can you get to that gentleman back there who's either wants a drink or he wants to say something? Either one will work for us. Although are we serve alcohol here? Probably not. You got to turn that mic on. One sec. Is it on? There you go.
Hello?
There you go.
I
Go
joined
for
the
it.
Guild in 1966 when I was 5, and at the age of 30, I had to leave because I wasn't working. But I've listened to what all these gentlemen have to say, and they all have points of view. But I've got to say that Mr. Franklin, the whole thing, I mean, he sounds like he's got a great I heard you today on the radio. In any case, I found,
You're everywhere.
I don't think if you don't think you're a terrific writer, you should be writing. I mean, it's a very hard thing. And I came out here after being an executive at ABC in New York. I came up with Batman. They paid me $5 for that. A raise, I quit. I came out here. I was out of work. I kept writing, and I had a friend named Larry Gordon, who was the head of a studio at that time. He gave my script to Nick Rogue, and that's how I did Bad Timing. if Nick Rogue had not gotten my script, I probably would have went back to law school. So I understand how much it's changed in terms of the computer world, which I barely can operate. But I really do think, networking to some extent has got to play into it, because you never know who the guy you're talking to could be next year. And if he's read something he likes, and it's all, I must say, I understand, again, I think what Franklin said, I agree with to a lot. But it's all, who do you know? I mean, do you like this guy? If there are two guys who got very good scripts, which one would you rather work with? And I think it's got a lot to do with I think you got a network, but I would not leave Arizona, as he says, to come out here to be a writer.
Okay, let's go back to, that person with the hand up, since they're all the way back there and they're being really pleasant and polite and all that. A question, I would hope.
Thank you. So this is for all members of the panel. If you think of your sites and your services as a little bit like social networking, how does one individual writer make themselves stand out from the crowd? And is that by paying for coverage? Is that by some of the other services? But otherwise, it just seems like the crowd has gotten very large.
Do you want to
Start with Jerrol first.
All of our websites are a resource. 4 different resources here. And I don't know exactly how the other ones work. Mine is just one resource. You list your script. If a producer's interested, that producer makes contact with you. But the bottom line is that you need to have more than one resource. That's it. You can use IMDb and start sending out query letters. You can send out a blast through Ashley here,
Ashley
or
there.
one through David. But the bottom line is it's not just one source. Now, if you can afford $10 a week, then you could probably use all 4 of our services. But don't just limit it to just one. There's dozens and dozens of different ways that you can market yourself, whether you live here in LA or you live out in Australia, with the resources that you have. You just have to know what they are. And I wish I had a couple hours that I could just spend with you.
Well, we will be happy to give them your home address. If you would like to host a brunch, I'll bet you everyone would show up, depending on what you're serving. David.
Well, I think it comes down to, I just went and saw Draft Day on Saturday night, and I really loved it. It's about football and the day of the draft and everything. But my, 82-year-old grandmother is not going to like that movie, So how do you differentiate yourself from the crowd is by researching who's looking for what. And a lot of this is subjective. So you've got to, and that's where the networking comes into play, because then you're going to meet more people, find out who's looking for what, and you might just have something that they like. Because how many times have we shown a script to one producer who thinks it's not good, and we show it to another producer who thinks it's great? So it's really, that's where I'm going. And so that's where the research comes into play, and I'm sure all of our sites, will. I'm not sure about all of them, but the way my site works is you can see who's looking for what. You're not going to pitch like Driving Miss Daisy to, Marvel Comics. You know what I mean? So,
although that would be fun.
Just to answer your question, though, to differentiate.
I'd watch that.
That's a Saturday Night Live sketch waiting to happen.
Graphic novel, Driving Miss Daisy to Hell. I would do that in a minute.
Just to answer your question, as I said, I'm a screenwriter. I use all of these services. You mentioned how can you differentiate yourself. Jerrol makes a really valid point. Is number one, you can be really persistent. Use all of our sites and all the other sites out there. That's differentiating yourself. Nobody in here raised their hand for all 4 of them. So right there, if you're using all 4 of them, I use all 4 of our services. So right there, I'm in, and Jack actually over here raised his hand for a lot of them too. So there's a few writers out there, and that would differentiate. The other thing is you can put log lines. All of us, it comes down to like a log line. That's a big thing. Spend time in your log line. People will spend 6 months or a year writing a script, and then they'll bash out a log line in a day. Spend a month on your log line. Make sure that thing is really, really good. The other big issue I see with screenwriters is just in the last year, I've written 3 spec scripts. I've gotten them all up on all these services. So again, that's differentiating yourself by being really, really productive and getting a lot of stuff up there. Write in different genres so that, you know, if this is not hitting, you're at least getting basis. Every script you write, and if you are persistent, put it up on all these services, you're gonna stand out. I doubt anybody in this audience would raise their hand that they've used all 4 of our services. They've written 3 spec scripts. So that's like 12 opportunities. Just do the math on that. That's 12 separate opportunities I've had that, you know, potentially could get my script to somebody. If you've only written 1 spec script and only put them on 1 site, that's not differentiating yourself.
How many people have used at least 3 of the services? So basically, those people who came together in a bus. Let's go.
I actually want to answer that
No,
question.
absolutely.
I
Do
wanna
that, and then we'll go to back there. Go.
You guys are going to keep hearing me coming back to this refrain, but the most important thing that any writer can do to differentiate themselves is write an amazing script. And pursuant to that, that's sort of how our site functions. You know, we don't require you to purchase an evaluation for your script, but we do recommend it. And if your script is great, it will be in the faces of people who have the power to do something with it. That's simple. Every Monday, we send out an email to all 2,300 of our members saying, here's a list of all of the scripts that have gotten an 8 overall or better from our readers. Every Wednesday, we send out an email that's targeted at what they've specifically asked for. So if they're interested in a comedy that's particularly strong on dialogue, they get a list of all of the comedies that got an 8 or better on dialogue in the previous week. And then because I'm a huge nerd, we built a recommendations algorithm similar to what Amazon and Netflix has. And we built it initially with the guidance of 2 of the winners of the Netflix prize. And then it turns out that one of the guys who lived down the hall from me in college is one of the world's sort of most renowned thinkers in building recommendations algorithms. He was a product manager at Google for 10 years, and now he's the vice president of data science at Cloudera. And he sort of souped it up. So it's far better than any website our size has a right to be. But, you know, in the same way that, you know, if you're on Netflix and you're like, if you like these movies, you may like this. We target material based on, you know, putting great material in front of people who might like it. And I think our reputation, you know, going back 10 years through the annual blacklist, I think, you know, benefits us tremendously in the fact that people take us seriously when they say that there's something that's worth their time.
I think it's a lot of, you know, it's a mixed bag. Let's go. Here we go. We got about 7 more glorious minutes, and we're going to get to you next for sure.
Okay.
It's on.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, just listening to you guys and having the philosophical discussion, I think it seems to me like Franklin's site is the one that offers the quality check on the script. Basically, it's like it's being evaluated, and so the industry audience for the screenplays aren't getting just a log line, but they're getting what they feel is like a certification or something, like a quality check on the script. And I was wondering if you guys had any feelings on you know, going that way, or ever consider that. And Franklin, do you have any competitors that you can point to in terms of doing that?
Short answer, no.
Like short answers. We're like,
other than like the nickel competition, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, we're like, look, I have extraordinary admiration for what Greg Beale has done with the Nichols Fellowship, and I also think that what the Austin Film Festival does, they're a competition that people in the industry pay attention to. They're well run, and the Austin Film Festival is really an extraordinary thing. And actually, we'll be announcing a partnership with them in the very near future. We're not a competition. You know, we are a layer over the entire film industry, particularly as it applies to companies that make WGA signatory projects, that it makes it more efficient for people to find good material, and makes it more efficient for people writing good material to get their work found. And I don't believe that there is. I think that what we do is singular within the film industry, given the relationships that we have, the companies with which we work, and the people who are actively perusing our site for information.
I got 2 stories for you. Being John Malkovich, you all have heard of that movie, and I presume you've all heard of the writer being totally lambasted about how bad a writer he was. And yet, Being John Malkovich was made, and it's actually a good movie. And I have a personal story that I had a producer make a point of calling me up. He found a script on my site, And he called me up and he said, Jerrol, this writer blows. This script is so bad. You're ruining your reputation by allowing this writer to have your script on his site. And he spent 10 minutes telling me that. And I heard what he had to say. I had a momentary lapse there, but I didn't do anything. I just left it alone. And I kid you not when I tell you that a week later, that writer not only optioned his screenplay, but he obtained management representation. So one man's garbage is another man's treasure, and that's the bottom line. And you want to get your script sold, then you got to market. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's easy at all. I mean, but it's your job.
We're going to go to that gentleman there who I promised. Sir,
Hi, many of the production companies and studios and agencies have divisions that specialize in scoping out published books to adapt them into screenplays and TV shows. I just wondered if any of your organizations have that or have plans to carry books as well as scripts.
No, but there have been a number of authors of books that have used my services, and they basically pitch it as, I have this book, I think it would make a great movie. Again, it's a matter of taking a step back and really crafting your query letter so that it's clear and concise, and again, spending time writing a really good log line. But you can pitch to producers. Producers will option books, and my service is a way of getting in touch with them.
David?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of companies on our site who are looking for books as well. Let me just comment a little bit on something Franklin was saying earlier, which I really agree with, which is that if 7 or 8 people are liking or really liking your script, that's when you know it's good. I firmly believe that myself. So the question is then who are those 7 or 8 people that you want to give your script to that are looking at it, you know? That's one thing to look at. And then there's another thing to look at, which is a famous writer that you probably have read his books or watched his movies is a guy named William Goldman. And what he said is that in Hollywood, nobody knows nothing. So.
Yeah, wait, actually, I want to jump in on that because I hate that quote. I really hate that quote. The idea... No, but seriously, the idea that in 2014, like that is a quote referenced by people who want to use it as an excuse for failure. It's, well, it didn't work out. Well, no one knows anything. So it's not my fault that this didn't work out. There are very few things that can be known for certain, but the idea that no one knows anything is absolutely absurd. I, for example, think that Aaron Sorkin knows how to write a good screenplay. I think that that's probably something that we can all rest assured of.
Aaron who?
But no, I bristle whenever that quote is referenced because I think that I think it is
funny. Come on.
No, I know, but it's not your use of it. I just think that you hear it so often.
It's on your letterhead then.
What? It is not on my letterhead. No, you hear it so often. And it is always after something doesn't work out, and it is always used as the like, well, there's really no way I could have known that it wasn't going to work out. So no one knows anything. It's all good, and it's just it's not true. And it's an excuse for not taking responsibility on sometimes.
Go back to his question about the books real quick.
Yeah, no, we don't do anything related to publishing yet. And the main reason we don't is because the vast majority of book options that come through sort of mainline Hollywood, particularly the studio system and sort of major financiers, are driven by the pre-sales of those books. So, whether those are Penguin publishing a book and having a ton, or a graphic novel publisher publishing a ton, or, like 50 Shades of Grey, you've got a sort of self-published author who's selling a ton via Amazon or whatever else. There's a Canadian sort of self-publishing website community that the name of which is escaping me at the moment, but is doing a lot of business in that regard too. And so I don't know that, I think the publishing industry does a relatively good job of filtering literary fiction, and usually that all just goes to Scott Rudin. And then, but beyond that, I think more often than not, people are monitoring sales figures than they are monitoring sort of the high concept for a book. So for that reason, we haven't entered that market. And I also think there are a lot of people doing that right now, and it's a very competitive marketplace for trying to make a more efficient market for publishing.
We need short questions because we're going to
quickie.
run out of our time.
Everybody here has written more than one script, I'm assuming anyway. So some of us, like myself, television,
Question.
film, and we have spec television shows that aren't original pilots, but they're like a Ray Donovan, a Game of Thrones, whatever. Do you put those up? I mean, should we put those up as well to have a more deep body of work on your sites if we're looking for representation, since this is the panel of how to succeed without representation?
Well, I think in Jerrol's site you can probably post anything you want. With my site, you're basically, it's one query letter per producer every time. So, and there are a lot of people that are looking for pilot scripts. So you would find out who is looking for the pilot scripts, and you'd pitch them that particular script.
I'm saying not an original pilot.
You mean a
Hey,
spec?
I think we're going to do.
Yeah, you know, if I were pitching a manager or an agent, I might say I have an original and I have some from an existing episode. I probably wouldn't do it without having an original one.
All the services can accommodate that. That's the short answer to that.
No, I mean, ours does
No,
not.
that's not the answer. The answer, let me try and answer that. There's no reason not to put a sample script on the site for a TV show, but you just have to understand that the market is pretty small for that. You don't have that many people going, I want to see someone's writing for Ray Donovan. It's a very small market. So if you've got, $60 you want to spend, it might be better spent somewhere else, whether it's for Blast, whether it's $50 for that, or $60 to place a script on my site.
Or free for us.
For him. Exactly. So there are better ways to spend that money.
It's we do not accommodate spec episodes of extant television or extant or past television series. The legal issues make it very problematic. And beyond that, my conversations with most showrunners and the folks who are doing the hiring is that they're not really using spec episodes as much to hire. They're looking for people who have original pilots and can bring something new to the voice of the show rather than just aping the voice that already exists.
Last question.
Franklin, really quickly. Sorry. Talking to proof of concept, knowing the process that a writer goes through to getting representation and staffed or on a movie, how important is it to have a web series up or some kind of proof of concept, a film shot?
You mean sort of shooting, if you have a script, having some sort of video trailer or something on those lines?
If you've already shot a film, how important is it for people, like someone sees a script they like, and then next thing they see it, say, well, what have they done after that?
I'm a firm believer, and I can cite sort of countless examples of this. If your script is amazing, it's not going to matter if you have the web trailer or anything else. It really is as simple as write an amazing script, put yourself in a position where that amazing script can be read by someone who can do something with it, and that's all it takes. We try to provide a platform that makes that process very brief. I talk about the part of the goal of the Blacklist is to make the gap between being an aspiring working writer and a working writer being a good writer. And it doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter what your racial background is, what your sexual background is, whatever it is, can you write? If so, we're going to try to do our best to put you in a position where people who can do something with you as a writer can read your work and then continue your career.
And we're going to have to end this portion. I want to thank Ashley, David, Jerrol, and Franklin. Shannon Gaulding, is it pronounced correctly?
Gaulding.
Well, so close. Can I call you Shannon? Sure. Thank heavens for that. With a group called Hollywood Gang, which we'll get to in a minute. J. Todd Harris, better known as Todd to his friends. Branded Pictures Entertainment, and Rough Diamond Productions, Julia Verdin. Let's talk about what your companies are like, and then we're going to kind of get to how people reach you. So let's start left to right. Talk about Hollywood Gang. Where'd you get the name Hollywood Gang?
Well, I work with a gentleman who is born in Italy. He's got the big accent and a lot of big hands. And he loves all things American. He's kind of got like a street thug demeanor. So his name is Johnny Noonery. So we did 300, Departed, 7, Immortals, the From Dusk Until Dawn series, so pretty gritty. Before I worked with Johnny, I was a studio executive at Columbia Pictures and Relativity. I was with Sony for about 11 years and Relativity for 2 years. So I have a mix of all those things. And when I was at Sony, I worked on all 3 of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies and Stranger Than Fiction and SWAT and did comedy. So I had a big
Do you have a
range.
favorite genre that you like?
I love a great horror movie.
A great horror movie. Okay.
My name is Todd Harris, and I run a company called Branded Pictures Entertainment. Before I did this, which I just founded in the last few months, I produced a lot of independent films, ranging from really ridiculous things to some more sublimely wonderful things. I was lucky to be an executive producer on The Kids Are All Right. I did produce painstakingly a film called Bottle Shock. I did recently made a lacrosse movie called Crooked Arrows. I've worked on really goofy stuff like Piranha 3D and Dudley Do Right, and that's what paid for the house. And so in that light, even though I am a sucker for great independent films, and really, ironically, the films I really love are films about people and personal films. I have started a company called Branded Pictures Entertainment, which is focused on, and we've raised a fund to acquire and develop branded intellectual properties, things that books, toys, games, remakes, anything. I mean, just the 3 things that were just announced today. Do people know what they were? There's going to be a movie of A Small World, Barbies, and wait for it, Peeps. Now, I'm hoping not to go quite to the dark side like that with my company, but that is what I am focused on, is it branded intellectual property, because if you look at what's working at the box office every week, week in and week out, year in and year out, 7 to 8 out of 10 are based on branded intellectual property.
So you're like the modern day product placement guy.
No,
in a way.
I'm not placing product. No, I'm not.
But you're placing a brand.
I'm actually adding value to a brand.
as the product placement would argue that they did.
And just the last thing before I move on, I am lucky enough to, with more humility, say that I was part of the producing team of a branded new musical in New York called Heathers, based on the 1989 movie of Heathers, and great respect to Daniel Waters, who wrote that. And just as great a respect to longtime WGA member Kevin Murphy, who runs Defiance. He's a TV show runner. He wrote the book. And Larry O'Keefe, who is a composer. Together they wrote the books, lyrics, and score to Heathers the musical. And it's good when Daniel Waters, who wrote the movie, came and said, "You made it so much better." And actually, as long as we're jumping guilds, we'll just say also to Andy Fickman, who is a very, very, very talented and extremely busy director, who's unbelievably directed an amazing project. It was an amazing thing to watch come together. If you're in New York and you want to see it, send me an email. I'll get you house seats. Okay.
Okay. Because he's not giving his email right
but
away.
Nice.
Oh, nice house seats. There you go. Julia?
Okay, I have an independent production company called Rough Diamond Productions. I've made 30 indie films. I started in the business running a production company in London in the development section, then ended up running the company. And then with Rough Diamond, we've done a whole variety of films, from family films, good, well-written action thrillers, which I've worked very hard with writers to create really good male lead roles, so we can attract like a William Hurt or an actor kind of on that level. And true life stories, family films. We've really done pretty much every genre at this point. I particularly like good, well-written conspiracy movies that have got some sort of socially relevant theme to them. And I also like good message movies that kind of are going to inspire people or touch their hearts in some way and put out a good message into the universe.
What kind of budgets do you look at? Or do you...
We've done like The Merchant of Venice. One of the projects I was involved with was an 18 million project movie. And then we've also done micro budgets for like around the $1 million and under mark. So really across the board. For me, it's all about story. A story that I think will touch people emotionally, or just entertain, or has got some sort of purpose.
Todd, budget-wise, is there a scope that you look at?
You know, I mean, you know, things like Bottle Shock and the
Is
kids.
that Alan Rickman?
Yes, it was, and Chris Pine and Bill Pullman and Freddie Rodriguez. It was really a lovely experience. That was a $5 million movie. Kids Are All Right was a $4.5 million movie. Now with branded things, you know, you do have to think about, you know, making $75 and $100 million movies, which means roaming with the beasts. And so I'm ready to do it. I'm happy to partner with any big producer and realize that if I'm going to make a 75 or 100 or $150 million movie, I will probably be winding up partnered with a big producer at a studio, which is part of the plan. But again, I'm working on a movie with Stephen Gyllenhaal right now that I think is going to get made for $2.5 to $3 million. It's a beautiful adaptation of a book. I'm very, very lucky to find Stephen Gyllenhaal to direct it. And there's a thriller set in London that's political that Julia would like. That we just got Ben Kingsley to say yes to, and Emily Watson and Jessica Brown Findlay, and believe me, it's a struggle to come up with the $6 to $7 million that will cost. It is a real struggle to come up with that money. And John Travolta and Salma Hayek in a touching adaptation of a memoir, it's $7 million, and it is hard to come up with that money for a drama with John Travolta and Salma Hayek in it. So I'm just telling you, not to be another doomsday, blah blah blah. But the landscape's tough. Landscape's tough for that's fair.
Shannon?
Most of our stuff is set up at Warner Brothers, so a lot of the things that we're doing, we do a lot of historical epics. So we're doing a Napoleon, sort of a gangster retelling of the Napoleon story with Rupert Sanders directing, and that will probably be 150. But it's it's period and battles and all of that kind of stuff. But we're also really working to diversify. We have some little things that we're probably going to do for a little genre horror movie for $5 million. You have to really, in today's world, be incredibly flexible because the studios are making less movies, and you can't just kind of hang around and hope that one of those will go.
So if I'm a writer, which I happen to be, and everyone else here, and they want to reach you, in other words, how reachable are you in respect to looking at people's scripts, and what's the best way to do it, and what would you be looking for? What would you're a little different, I think, now because you've changed your stripes, but that doesn't mean you're unstripeable. I mean, you're
hire writers to write those stories.
I would hope so, unless they're coming in with just boxes that they're reading off the side of the boxes from. But yeah, I agree.
For us, mostly I go through people that I know, people that I recommend, obviously managers and agents and directors who bring in people that they like. But I also I've known Franklin for a million years, and I'm always reading the blacklist things and culling that and going through and circling and figuring out what would be right for us, whether it's something that the script looks like it would be a movie for us. We don't have a development fund, so we have a lot of people writing for free, writing specs. We don't get paid if the movie doesn't go. So the days of, overhead draws are long gone. So I'm always looking for people who can jump in and work with us on something. It's a book that we've gotten a little option on, or an article or something. We have an article that we optioned for $1,000 that we're doing with Gavin O'Connor, who directed Warrior and Janie's Got a Gun, that's going to be coming out later. So that's a big opportunity for somebody who's an unrepresented writer to come and sit and make that relationship with the director like Gavin. But I read, on Pitch Fest. I go on that all the time. So I don't read a fax. Don't send me a fax. I'm going to say I think that's not a good way. I know that some people feel like that's a good way to get your stuff out. I don't read a fax, and I don't take a blind email. The thing that I like about Blacklist and Pitchfest and some of those other sites is it gives me some protection with people who are with writers who are unprotected, because in the past, especially when I was at Sony, we had a couple of incidences where I sent a query letter and I said this, and somebody read the script and I'm not represented, and they didn't sign a submission letter. And, people will be litigious, so you have to protect the entity that you work for. But, so I'm fairly reachable. Just don't send me a fax. Sorry.
I am actually eager to talk, not at this moment, but I mean, if you want to, about what it takes to get agents' attention and why, put yourself in their shoes and think about that a little bit. And the way things come to me is, is through agents and managers I trust. But here's an example. A manager sent somebody they insisted I meet a writer. And it's just the other day, and I'm like, what are we talking about? He's got to meet him. I'm like, so he comes, and this is a manager I haven't talked to in 5 years, and there's the problem. And he's pitching me $150,000 sort of like movie, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I'm the wrong guy. So that was like a case of if her manager, just meeting to be a nice guy, which was, more to. Anyway.
Do your homework before the meeting.
Right. I should have just insisted they tell me what the hell it was about. But I will say that there's a guy in the back of the room right there. His name is Tom Pettinelli. I just hired him 2 weeks ago. And if you want me to read something, he's probably going to read it first. And I'm saying that I say that not because when I think you get to be my age and you think about the producers who are much bigger and more famous than I am, and you think about how few scripts they really read every week, I think you've got to, get somebody else's credibility, to get you to read it. And so I'm going to ask Tom to read it because I trust him, and I have another guy who works with me, and I trust them. And that really is the way to get to me. I get those 3 emails a day. I used to glance at them, and now I don't. I realize it's a black hole for me because I can't look at those 3 emails and think, oh, am I interested? It's a little dangerous. So I don't have time to read the blacklist either. It's so much stuff. So I really am. I really do appreciate it when somebody can tell me, whether it's a stranger or a friend or an agent, this is really what it's about, and this is how it's going to reach people. I want to know if it's viable. I mean, it's just too hard to do all this work if it's just if you can't figure out who's going to see it.
Julia?
Most of the scripts that
Okay,
we get
got it.
are either from agents and managers that I've got relationships with, or they come from a referral from someone whose opinion I trust. If someone rings me and goes, "Hey, I just read this great script. I think it might be up your street," and it's someone that I think has got good taste, then I'm going to take a look at it. But every now and again, there's just like a pitch of a story, of an idea or a world that's interesting that I'll see, and it'll just catch my attention, and then I might look at it, because we do all types of things. Like one of the scripts I found, Cynthia Riddle, who's over there. I'd met her a long time ago when she was
Cynthia
working
Wave.
at MGM,
Okay, there we go.
who we'd done a movie with, and she sent me a beautiful note about this project that she'd written about Sarah Bernhardt. Now it just happens I know all about Sarah Bernhardt, and I thought it was a really interesting story, and said now we're working on the project together. So things do happen in strange ways. The other day I was sitting at a breakfast next to a writer who seemed really bright and intelligent, and he just pitched me a really interesting story, and it was an interesting world, and so I said I'd read his script. So there really is no norm. I tend to keep very open. I think the worst thing for me is when I'm out at a party and a writer comes up in a very noisy room and starts trying to pitch me a very long-winded pitch, because I can't hear it, and I can't take anything in. So I think it's really good as a writer to be prepared with a short, succinct, interesting pitch, because if I hear a 3 or 4, 5 sentence pitch that sounds interesting, then I might have that person come for a meeting in the office when I can hear and pay due respect and attention to the longer pitch on the story. So I think that's a very important bit of advice.
So staying with that, let's assume you either get in the room with one of you 3, or you're sitting on a plane, or you're stuck in the New York subways and you're sitting next to this person. What do you want to hear and what don't you want to hear? Do you understand what I'm saying? It's kind of like, especially in the room, if you're that far that you're in a room and you've got a writer, I am under the impression that the writer, how he handles himself, does have some merit to if you want to move forward. If he's insane, it's tough to deal with insane people.
Usually before I take a meeting with someone, I've read something, and I fall in the camp where Franklin does. Send me a script that
makes my underwear shoot off of my body, makes me cry, scares the shit out of me, or presents a world that I haven't seen. You know, I mean, I've worked with Charlie Kaufman. When you read Charlie Kaufman, a lot of times you can't. I'm not smart enough to understand it, but I can say, wow, this is a singular thing. The focus for us right now in this really changing marketplace is the studios want to see things that have, you know, that have a director attached to them. So I have to have a piece, before I bring you into the room, I need to know that there's something in that script that I can send to a director and make them pay attention. So for me, it's about the writing. I don't care if you're a nerd. I don't care if you're sweaty. If you can write, I don't give a shit about the other stuff. I just don't, because it matters whether or not, for me, it's whether or not you have a voice. And some guys are the greatest pitchers in the world and they can't write. So it's really about the material.
I'd love to be able to, I really listened to that conversation you were having earlier, and I agree with some things that Franklin said, but I also think it is important to have some marketing savvy to your presentation. And I think that everyone, for better or for worse, it's unfortunate that in this day and age, artists have to be entrepreneurial in any art form, I think. And I think you've got to, again, think about what that agent, think about what that producer, think about what they have to go through and help them, let them see, where this lives in the marketplace, who's going to like this, what makes it unique.
Well, I agree that you do have to know who the audience is for your movie. And when I said do your homework before the meeting, I wasn't talking about you. But if you guys are going to come in and you're going to see me, we're not making a family movie. Every movie except for one at the company that I work for has been rated R. So, do your homework and also have a point of view and be thoughtful about who is going to see your movie. Because if you can't speak to who the audience is, that's a difficult thing to expect the producer to find for you.
And also, I mean, if you have written, I think, look, I love it when a spec script comes out of the blue and just blows you away. It's fantastic. It's really so rare, but it's exciting when it happens. But if you've written a great spec script and you understand what the audience is, then I would look for producers who have done those types of movies before. That's, I wouldn't send Joel Silver, Tender Mercies. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the better your presentation is, if you have sort of visuals, if you've got like a good, well-written synopsis, if you've had some thought as to who your audience is, then ultimately you're more likely to have somebody open it up and read the script. There's enough interesting in your pitch package.
Does it help to precast it in your mind? Does that count anymore? It used to be who's,
No, I think it's all in the writing. I mean, for me, when I look at a script, first of all, I have to fall in love with the story. Secondly, I have to fall in love with the world that story's in, because as a producer, I'm going to be stuck in that world for the next year or so. And thirdly, I have to believe that I can attract, the script's good enough that I can attract a really good director that's going to help attract talent. And fourthly, I have to see roles that I think will attract talent, that are well fleshed out, written, give an actor something to play, have a good character arc to them, and it's going to give them something to hang their hat into.
I mean, we all know that Hollywood, can casturbate with the best of them, and the truth is that
book will it be?
I mean, there's just so many people just talking about who's going to be in their movie, but I don't mind when somebody says, this is for a Nick Cage type, this is for a Harrison Ford type, this is for I don't mind that.
I'm not mad at it, but it matters where every studio has a different point of view. Are you going to make it, it's challenging when you're sitting in the room with a writer and it's a $150 million movie and they're like, talking about somebody who just is never going to get cast at the studio. So, I don't think you have to, if it helps you define the character, even if it's, I don't care if you're writing for Errol Flynn, but it helps you find who that person is.
Could have had dinner with Errol Flynn.
Yeah,
you didn't pick him, though.
The hair was fabulous.
Questions. Let's go to a few questions. Do we have a few questions? Oh,
everybody figured it out.
I've got one, Andrew. So, Todd,
Lady in the green.
Todd, you were saying that since I imagine that most people in here would prefer to be represented, and it sounds like that is the best way to get to all three of you. You were saying that you had some tips.
Well, I mean, look, I'm as frustrated with agencies for different reasons as many people are. I mean, I think I've got something that, I think that Ray Fine should read it. And Joel Lubin hasn't called me back. And the reason Joel Lubin hasn't called me back is I haven't offered him any money. So I get that. Hopefully by the time you get to be of a certain, you've done enough work in town that certain people take you seriously and say, well, maybe we should really have a look at this for Ray Fines and think about it. But I think as a writer, here's an example. A friend of mine, who shall go nameless, but he's a very talented writer, and he writes a lot. I made a movie that he wrote a few years ago. He writes in a very certain a comedic, cynical style that I happen to really enjoy. It's not for all markets, but it really, there's a subversive quality to everything he writes, which I really like. He's been through a lot of agents recently, and he's probably 60, and he said, Todd, I'm looking for another agent. I'm like, oh, again? And and he said, do you have any recommendations? And I sent it to Frank Wooliger at Gersh, who's a wonderful, smart, erudite agent. And I said, I've got this new guy, and he's written a new pilot. And so Doug sent him all this new stuff, and then Frank said to me, well, which one's the new pilot? And I said, I don't think he's quite done with that yet. And he said to me, let me know when he's done with the new pilot. Because what people are looking for is the fresh meat. And they're also looking for, somebody who's not a one-trick pony, I believe.
Define one-trick pony in
well,
that
by
sense.
somebody who wrote one thing, 10 years ago and hasn't written anything since, and they're not, that you can't put them up for an assignment, and you can't.
You have to have material. I mean, that's the point. But when you read a script that you love, and somebody who's not represented or they're hip pocketed somewhere, and you call someone an agent or a manager, you need to know that writer is going to be able to take to them 2 or 3 or 4 fresh pieces of material, because they're not in a position, they can barely find paying jobs for the guys they've represented for 5 years.
Well, I think that's part of the problem. And so I've tried to put myself in the agent's position, and they've got whether it's CAA or ICM or WME or UTA or APA or Paradigm or whatever, everybody's on the hot seat. And you've got everybody's very short-term horizon now. It's the problem with corporate America, when all we think about are quarterly results, and nobody's looking at 2 or 3 or 4 years out. Don't get me started on global warming. So, but I think
Don't have more
agents
questions,
are.
we might.
I think agents are under pressure to deliver income and profits in a very short period of time, and most agents and many managers don't really want to cultivate somebody new and spend. It takes so much time if you think about it. And so really agents are like, can I make a sale right now? Can I sell something in the next 2 months? Is this going to be worth my while? Which is why because they're under pressure. They've got they're all making $100, $50, $100, $200, $500,000 a year. That's a lot of 10% commissions, and prices aren't what they used to be for screenwriting. So I just think that you need to really think before you go to an agent. Now, I was out teaching a seminar, and I met this young girl from Alabama who graduated from Vanderbilt. And the guy who brought me out to teach the seminar said, I've got this one really smart girl in my class, and I think you should read her pilot. And I did, and it was really smart. And I sent it to a manager, and they signed her, because she's 21 years old and had this really fresh, fun voice. And I'm very excited for her, and so she could stop working at the Apple store if they could sell it.
What do you think about the fact that there are not that many 21-year-olds in this room? There are a lot of older writers who have been very successful in the past, been represented, now aren't represented, trying to figure out maybe their next step. I started very late. I started writing when I was like 80. So, I mean, but I did start late. I mean, do you have any interest, thoughts on that?
I think the best advice that I could put over, something that I try to do as a producer, is understand who your audience are. Think when you think about what am I going to write next? Think about what is it that audiences want, because we're in a tough marketplace right now. It's expensive to go out to the I'm talking about movies because I'm a independent film producer, and so that's my marketplace. But what are the type of things that an audience will pay $15 to go and see, plus the babysitter, plus this, plus that, parking, etc. Or what will they pay $8.99 to download and watch in the comfort of their home, and why? And really know what the message of your film is and what emotional resonance it's going to kind of have on an audience that's going to make them want to do that. And almost think of how would you sell the trailer for your film in your head? And also get a basic understanding of production, because if you understand what the marketplace is, then I think you know better how to sell to it. So I think for any writer, just having a basic understanding of the production side of things and where things are, you've either got to give a tentpole movie for a studio where they're all looking for remakes and sequels, or if you're coming to an independent like me, the budget has to be supported by the cast. So we have to have a movie that's got roles that we can cast decent name talent for, and we're also going to have to make it at the budget that talent can support. So if something takes place in a zillion different locations or is not remotely containable, the budget is going to just be too big for us to manage, and so that project's not going to work for us. So you have to almost kind of backtrack into your thinking in that route, and at the same time you've got the pressure on to have the original voice and the original idea and something that's unique and special.
We have a question, and then we have a question, and then we have a question, and then we have a question.
Can you hear me? No.
Yes. Yes.
How do we get you to read? How do we get you to read what you just described as the perfect approach?
I actually do look at emails if something's a really interesting pitch.
Do you hold your mic up a little bit?
In the example of Cynthia, she sent me a letter, and it was a beautifully written letter, and there was a kind of a paragraph pitch, but it was a story that immediately piqued my interest.
I will say, the stuff like the Blacklist and the Pitch Fest, those are things that I do go to. I can set them so that they send me a blast. On Blacklist, I can go and it's rated R, it's morally ambiguous, dramatic, violent, the things that I know will resonate for myself and my partner. And I get... And it, like he said, he has an algorithm, and the computer goes behind the curtain, and bam, there's 6 things. It's in one piece of paper. I circle what I want. I tell my assistant to get it. It's very easy because it tailors, and it's incoming. And I know that the Blacklist, or I also use Pitch Fest, that there's safety inside of that. It's not because I've had trouble in the past with a couple of people who did not like receiving no as an answer and would call the office and berate, and they got a little weird. So
I apologize.
It is, but it's something that it's what works. It's what works for me, and I knew it was you, and I recognized you.
Sorry, that gentleman over there with his hand up there, and then we'll come this way. We'll try to get some new people.
What's the genesis for the branded entertainment Lego, Hasbro deals? And more to the point, is there an opportunity for a writer to walk into a corporate headquarters and pitch to Crystal Geyser the musical and have that become something?
I want to be clear that I'm not really looking to make Instagram the movie, although if you have a pitch.
Got a big audience already, built-in audience.
Don't think I haven't thought about it. So I think I am interested in hearing a writer who's got an idea for a brand. There's a lot of ways to find brands, and some of them are a secret. But there's a lot of different places to look for brands. Sometimes, look, who wanted to make a Sherlock Holmes movie until producer Lionel Wigram went to his friend Guy Ritchie, who went to Robert Downey, and the next thing you know, Sherlock Holmes was cool again. So I think the people, again, in a different version of safety, the studios like the safety of a brand, of a pre-sold title.
Brand doesn't have to be a product; it can be a person.
I'm specifically. I mean, look, if somebody had walked in and put Inception on my desk, I would have wept I wouldn't have gotten through the script. What was that movie about? But if you told me that Chris Nolan is going to direct Leo DiCaprio, I would have said, how much? I wouldn't have said, so in that case, there's no brand except that, Nolan and DiCaprio are the brand. Right. But that's not the kind I'm really talking about books and toys, and I think, you see more and more of it all the time. I would not have thought Sherman and Peabody was a $100 million grossing idea. Even with when Rob Minkoff told me 5 years ago, I'm working on Sherman and Peabody, I was like, good luck with that, pal. But, and by the way, and I want to fly exactly in the face of some of the crap that we're saying about all this safety nonsense and thinking about your audience. Who was the audience for 12 Years a Slave? Who was the audience for Dallas Buyers Club? Who was the audience for The Sessions? Who people just wrote from their heart and wrote incredibly moving stories. I mean, what was the other one? If you'd gone in and pitched Philomena to a studio, they said, get the hell out of here with that nonsense. They would have.
Cynthia? A question.
Hi, yes. I'm on the Membership and Finance Committee here at the Writers Guild, and one of the things that we've been talking about recently, and it piggybacked great on this panel that you're doing today, is that apparently about 70% of Writers Guild members are unrepresented. My husband and I often write as a team, and we've been at ICM for the past decade. And have been working the whole time. And right now we have a film going into
I need a question.
Production in a few weeks. My point is that there's a lot of Writers Guild members who are unrepresented, and that's what everybody's here about tonight. And a lot of the reason why is even while we're working, it's very hard to get a rep. So I guess that's the question: is how to.
So.
Well, do people want to know how to get a rep, or do people want to know how to get their stuff read without a rep?
Well, both, all of the above.
Both. So I'm gonna jump in here. I didn't know what I was doing when I came out here 2 years ago, and I went to AFM, and I walked around AFM, and I walked into everybody, and I basically wasted a full year. But I realized what was going on there. So the next year I walked into AFM. And I walked in asking them what they were looking for. And I found a company that was looking for an action movie. They were very specific. And I said, okay, followed up with them, called them, went in, sat down, discussed it, told them what I was going to write for them. That is what they're threatening to go into production in July. I say threatening because when they start, I believe it. But similar to how I stumbled into it. So I think there are things you can do. There are things out there that you can do where you can run into people. There are a lot of small independent production companies that want to make small movies. This is not necessarily the small movie meaning under 2 million, under 1.2 million or whatever. And they're out there. And I think one of the things I would suggest is contacting them. You'd be amazed with how open they are to finding out what's going on with you, and at the same time, what they might be looking for. Whether it be a horror movie starring, a dog, a cat, and a horse, whatever it might be, that you could then maybe craft for them. So that's kind of off the side of that, but it's kind of what I did. Question. Oh. What was the question? Oh.
By the way, the AFM is the American Film Market.
Sorry.
It's in November in Santa Monica. So that's where everybody's selling their stuff. But I mean, I get. Let's talk for 1 second about getting representation. If you had it and you don't have it anymore, my instinct is to look for a manager. And I think that managers are actually interested a little bit more in careers. They generally, with a few exceptions, don't have the sort of Damocles hanging over them about whether they made $100,000 in sales this month. And and the managers can spend the time with you, and they can have 15 or 20 clients. And I like the solo operation manager. They're actually looking for that writer. They will read. They will take the time to read. If you're a young lit agent at one of the big agencies, yes, you're looking for that rare gem, but mostly just trying to service the clients.
Yeah, those guys, they've got to get their name on that booking slip. They're on some of those younger agents, who you would think would be more likely to read when you look them up on Studio System. They've got 40 clients listed. So what they're doing is they're just servicing somebody else's agenda. So they just don't have the time. I think you're right with managers. Anybody that and I'm not a big networker, I haven't found it. I've done more lunches than you can count in 20 years. I never got a movie out of them. I never got a relationship with a director. I got to know, people who I can now call, but it's a bit of a fantasy, I think, that like you're going to network and hit the jackpot, but everything leads to something else. There is truth in that. And I think if you had representation and you don't have it anymore, who can you call? Who's that one person that you can call who can read your script, and then who can you go to that you can make a targeted ask? When I was laid off and didn't have a job for a year, I could not call people and say, can you help me? But what I could do was call Amy Pascal and say, will you call this person? And she would say, of course. And she felt great. It was one thing she could do. Then she was done. It was off the list. So she felt efficacious and needed, and I wasn't wasting her time. People are not going to sit down and brainstorm with you, but if you have something great that you've read, even if it's an assistant that reads it, every assistant is waiting to be my assistants would kill themselves to walk in and say, I have a great script that you have to read. And I wouldn't even ask them if it was somebody who was represented. I would know that they had them sign the form, and when they gave it to me, they just thought it was something amazing. And that's where it all starts. So all you need is one person. You just have to convert each thing into another one.
It doesn't take a lot of people. Really, it's just one. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you brought something up earlier.
Sorry. I'll go back.
Yes. Hi guys, thanks, and thanks for putting in the time. Mark Zickrey, I've sold over 100 scripts, tons of stuff. I just won the Writers Guild Diversity Award, and right now I'm in this situation of looking for representation and figuring out how to research so I can find someone who's going to be a good match for what I write. Someone who, because obviously, if you get the wrong agent, the wrong manager, if they're, you get it. So any suggestions on how one can research taste, research all of that to find the right match, so that you have someone who is going to be avid and enthusiastic and aggressive in terms of going after building or rebuilding a career?
I think reading the trades and looking at, and I think there's some of those script grids where they like say who's selling what, and looking at who's been successful in your genre with other writers that kind of write like similar types of things to what you have.
Yeah, pick 5 movies that you really liked. If you guys don't have IMDb Pro, which is good, it's not as great as.
It's the best $15 I spend every month.
Exactly, it's not as good as Studio System, but it will give you a lot of information. When I use all that stuff. I go and I look Box Office Mojo and I look things up by the year when I'm doing my writer's list. What movie did I love last year? And then I go to that writer. So if you look up who are those 5 movies, who are they written by, look who are their managers, who represents them.
And if we, you have been represented before, so I mean if I'm on IMDb, I go, first of all, I don't fuss with CAA, and I don't fuss probably with WME. It's a factory, and it's you're gonna get elbowed to death there. I look at those at the next rung down, where people, I look at Don Buchwald and Associates, and I look at APA, and I look at, Paradigm, and I look at, Gersh, and then I look and if you just click on the agency, look at who their clients are. Those clients first of all, does he need me? Does he have 3 other people writing what I write? Well, then maybe he's not your guy. But I mean, you're an old pro. I mean, not to cast ageism, but if you're an old pro, I'm an old pro. You should look for an old pro. I mean, one interesting thing. Everybody remember Mike Marcus, who was a huge agent at CAA. CAA. And then he took this detour through, I guess, running MGM for a while, which is a detour for anybody, it seems. And but Gary Barber's making money. So, but then eventually he landed at Echo Lake, which is Doug Mankoff's company, and he's a manager now. And it's what he's done is he's sort of scooped up all these directors who used to be somebody, and and just like he used to be a big fish at CAA, and he's sort of taken them under his wing. It's the David Wards of the world, and the Howie Deutsches of the world. I mean, these guys ruled the '80s. These guys ruled the '80s, and so. I think somebody like that who's going to understand where you're coming from and still takes the time, I would not look for some young Turk. I don't think it's going to be a young Turk.
There. Sorry, I keep skipping you, man.
You spoke to something earlier. I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit. It's this phenomenon of major production companies with studio deals asking writers to work on spec. And I think that's part of the problem with representation is there's no commissions. And I frankly look at lit reps and I wonder, how do these people make a living? Because I know what the spec, I know what sells. I watch the tracking boards, and if you add up those commissions, it's not a lot of money, because a lot of production companies, and I get frequently offered from respectable companies with good producers there, hey, will you do this project with me? I just don't have any money. It's like it's a volunteer position. And I think if you decimate the profession of writing and you make it volunteer, I just think, it's going to be a problem. And producers, can work on 15 projects and only get paid when they go. A writer, you can only work on one at a time and do many fewer. So I just think it's a problem in the industry.
I totally hear you. We don't have a deal. Everything from the rent to my salary, which is not a big salary, is paid for by the guy who owns the company, out of his pocket. The office rent, the staff, the medical insurance, everything. So there just isn't the money. And look, I was really lucky. I was at Columbia back in the heyday when anybody who sneezed had a deal with a nice big office and an assistant and a development person and a draw. And those days are over. It's kind of shocking. And I wish that there was money. And we talk about trying to find money, but more than anything, what we have to do is find material and turn it into something that we can then sell. And then everybody will get paid. I don't know what the other reality is. I don't have the bread myself. So I don't know if you.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, with having a production company, you deal with the same thing. You work for like endless hours on trying to get these projects made, and if you don't get them made, you don't get paid. And often, when you do get them made, you get you get price the producer reduced. Fees get squeezed right down. I mean, that's what the indie film business is. It's like a really tough business. I think, certainly from my friends in TV, there seems to be a little bit more safety sort of pay-wise there, but independent film producing is tough. So if you're an independent film writer, it's not an easy world. It's not easy for the producers. It's not easy for anybody in that world. So it's a struggle.
But I with Branded, the concept behind Branded, to tell you the truth, is really I raised the money not just to pay myself a salary. I raised the money to go out and spend it on intellectual property and writers. Now, I can't compete with studio quotes, and I don't think anybody cares about quotes anymore, really. So, which is too bad. But
explain what quotes are first.
If I got paid $200,000 to write my last movie, you should pay me at least that, or $225 for this movie.
And what everybody says now is quotes are no longer the floor; they're now the ceiling, which means you're probably going to get paid less than what you got paid last time.
But with Branded, my theory. Look,
that's the studio point.
I think it's a tough time. I think it's a tough time to be a writer, which is why I think writers have to think out of the box and be more entrepreneurial about advancing their materials. I mean, there are very few writers who can rest on their laurels. Very few. So the theory behind Branded was to go out and get intellectual property that I liked for $0 to $50,000, and then go pay a writer to write it for between $0 and $50,000, even though that's not your quote. Now, it's got to be WGA minimum. We are at the WGA. So it's got to be WGA minimum, but I will pay WGA minimum. And my theory is that people who used to get $150,000 to $250,000 to $300,000 these days, to get paid 40 grand or 50 grand to write for 2 or 3 months, it's not a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. You'll still get your production bonus if the movie gets made, and hopefully a back end. I mean, hopefully. And at least you'll get residuals because you're with a guild. I'm a producer.
Let's go right there where the mic is. Then can we go to the back afterwards, Laura?
You find a story, you love it. The first thing you say is, what else do you have? What do you want to see? If each of you could just answer that,
Well,
please.
when somebody comes in for a meeting, we pretty much say, what have you got? And then we have a big binder full of open writing assignments at the studio, which I then pitch to you, and you say whether or not you like them. And then we see if there's any other idea. Then I have a big book that's just story ideas, and we see if there's something in that world. And then hopefully we come out of it with something that we feel like we can work on together.
Let's go to the back there, and then I think that's going to be it because our time is up.
He made a cute quip about, going to a crystal geyser, but since the big branded projects like the Marvel Comics are assignments, is there a way for writers to self-generate branded ideas and bring them to you or bring them to someone else?
Well, I'll answer quickly because I know we're on the run. By definition, something that's branded has an address in the marketplace. People have bought. I met with somebody who made a game a couple weeks ago, and the game has sold 10 million copies around the world. So I trust that people know that. What you're talking about as far as making a brand for something, it's a lot of work to make a brand for something. That's why sometimes people will write a screenplay and say, shit, if only this were based on something. And they go, I'll write a graphic novel about this very thing. And then it becomes branded because it was a graphic novel or something like that.
Last question.
Okay, we've all talked about indie films. Do you guys, are you interested in TV pilots?
Yes.
Yes,
I want to be in the TV game. I want to get paid.
Yes.
Yes. Got a bunch of yeses.
It's too good right now not to be in.
All the interesting stuff is happening on TV. Everybody, that's what I love about TV. Here's the idea. Do you like it? Yes, no. Yes, let's make it. Okay, is it really good? No, let's not make it. Let's not go to the series. It's like bing, 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 bing. It's a business. Movies like, let's talk about who might do this in a couple of years. Oh, for Christ's sake.
Okay.
TV's much more immediate.
Yeah. Okay, so we got a yes, and we got a great accent. Yes.